welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're gonna dive into the world of Bob Camblin. We've got a whole bunch of his quotes, like little snippets from his biography, and even this YouTube video, like analyzing his etching palm tree, Houston, Texas.
Oh, that's a cool one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we're trying to figure out what made Camblin tick, both as an artist and a thinker.
Like, what were his motivations?
Exactly, yeah. It was like, how did those two things, the art and the thinking, how did they feed into each other?
Yeah, so it's like we're putting together a puzzle, using these different sources to get the big picture of his life and his work.
Right, exactly. So to start off, let's just set the stage. Who was Bob Camblin?
Well, like his biography paints him as this like a multifaceted artist. He didn't just stick to one medium. He was like painting, sculpting, and doing prints.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just like dabbling either. He had pieces in some big exhibitions, like the
Mm.
62nd American Exhibition at the Art Institute of Chicago.
Wow.
And even like Art News and Art in America featured his work.
So he was like playing in the big leagues then. That's not just talent. That's like real recognition.
Absolutely. But what I find really interesting are his quotes. They're like these little glimpses into how he thought, revealing this like blend of Zen philosophy, art, and just everyday life.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me too. You see these like themes running through his words, like that Zen idea of Wu Wei, that effortless action thing, moving with the current instead of against it.
Like almost like a martial artist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like using your opponent's energy against them. And he seemed really fascinated by impermanence,
Yeah.
like finding stillness in chaos, like that palm tree and his etching. It's just standing there strong.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's where his art and his philosophy really come together. He said that famous quote, art for art's sake has become art for life's sake.
I like that.
It wasn't just about creating something pretty. It was about reflecting life itself, like they were two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And that makes me think about how he was like kind of suspicious of language. It's almost like he thought words were too clumsy to express the really deep stuff.
Uh-huh.
He's got this one quote, writing started as pictures. Like he's saying, before we got all these fancy words, we used images, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
And maybe we lost something along the way.
It's like he's challenging us to look deeper, to find the meaning beyond the words.
Yeah.
Makes you think maybe we overthink things sometimes instead of tapping into that deeper level of knowing that he talked about.
Right, like when he said, we all are creative, but we lose our magic in understanding everything instead of knowing. It's like, are we too busy analyzing to actually experience things?
He's saying we should trust our gut, that instinct, that goes beyond just logic.
It's not about ignoring your brain, right? It's more like finding that balance.
Exactly. It's a balance between intellect and intuition.
Okay, so we're starting to get a sense of his philosophy. But how did this all translate into his art? Let's focus on that etching palm tree, Houston, Texas. What is to tell us about Camblin's vision?
That etching is really interesting because we have that YouTube video analysis to kind of like guide us. They describe it as this lone palm tree reaching for the moon with all these rough textures and a very, stark and monochromatic palette.
And it's fascinating how the video links that back to Camblin's whole philosophy. They say the palm tree bending in the wind, it's a symbol of resilience, like
Wow.
adapting. It's not about resisting, but moving with it, like that whole Wu Wei idea.
Yeah, it's about finding a way to thrive even when things are tough.
Right, like that palm tree finding its balance in the wind. And the video also talks about the moon. They say it represents clarity, enlightenment in the middle of all the chaos.
Which makes sense given all the Zen stuff we've been talking about.
Definitely. And there's a connection to the I Ching hexagram 28 great excess, which is all about finding strength and balance when things feel overwhelming.
So he was drawing on all these ancient ideas.
It seems like it. And what really struck me was the minimalism and the rawness of the etching. The video says that reflects Camblin's belief in, like, authentic, unpolished creation. He wasn't trying to hide the rough edges. He was embracing them.
And that rawness comes through in his quotes, too, like when he said, when you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. It's about being in the moment, trusting your gut, and not overthinking it.
That ties in perfectly with Palm Tree, Houston, Texas. He's capturing this huge idea of resilience and reaching for something bigger than yourself, but he's doing it with these simple, powerful images.
Exactly. And there's this quote from the source material. It says, the palm tree represents resilience and the pursuit of higher truth or meaning. In reaching upward, it reflects the human condition forever striving amidst adversity.
It's like he's saying, yeah, life's tough, but there's beauty in the struggle. Keep reaching, keep striving, and you might just find what you're looking for.
And that's just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover about Camblin's philosophy and how it played out in his life. In the next part, we'll dive even deeper into his words and see what other gems we can find. Welcome back. It's like amazing how Camblin's work just kind of draws you in. It's not just about looking at the art, it's about like discovering these deeper layers of meaning. And he kind of gives us clues in his writing on like how to actually do that.
Yeah, he does. It's like he's giving us this map to navigate not just his art, but like life itself.
Right. Like take his quote, step off the train of thought to find the power that is no power. He's telling us to break free from, our usual ways of thinking, those ruts in our minds. It's about tapping into a different kind of power, one that's not about force or control.
Makes you think about like letting go, surrendering to the creative process instead of trying to control every little thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be super hard, especially in a world that's all about like productivity and logic.
It's like that other quote, when you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. There's this real sense of just being in the moment, not getting lost in planning or analyzing.
He's saying sometimes you just got to dive in and trust your instincts. That's such a powerful message for, anyone who's creative.
Yeah, just let the work happen. Don't force it.
Right. But it's not just about art, is it? It feels like Camblin is saying this could apply to like any challenge we face.
Absolutely. Like, have you ever thought about a decision so much that you end up like frozen, unable to actually do anything?
All the time.
Camlin's telling us to tap into that gut feeling and just go for it.
And you know what? Even if it doesn't work out, it's not a big deal. He even talks about failure as like a part of the process. One must try to fail in order to succeed. Success will be another failure. It's like, don't be afraid to experiment, to mess up. That's how you grow.
It's so true. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's how you get there.
Every time you like stumble, you learn something.
It's about the whole journey, the ups and downs.
And he doesn't lose his sense of humor about it either. Remember that quote about arguing with a pessimist versus an optimist? When you end an argument with a pessimist, you say, you're absolutely right. With an optimist, you say, it's a banana.
Oh, I love that one. It's like, don't take yourself too seriously, just laugh sometimes.
He also gets into some really deep stuff about language, like how limited it can be. For example, he said, if you argue or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate.
It's like real communication goes beyond words.
Exactly. It's about connecting, emotionally, intuitively. And he contrasts knowing with believing. For Camblin, truly understanding something comes from experience, not just agreeing with an idea.
He really liked to challenge the usual way of thinking. He even compares love to art. He says, if experience, no description is necessary, but often making out is confused with love and feeling good is not always art.
Makes you think, right? He's pushing us to like rethink what love actually is, something more than just a fleeting feeling or like a romantic notion.
He's about a connection that's like beyond words.
And throughout his writing, there's this feeling of like urgency. He talks about living in the past, present, and future and approaching an edge of real time.
Like he knew things were changing fast and we needed to like adapt our thinking to keep up.
He even compares the universe to a hologram. He says, we are holograms, and the more we get together, the clearer it becomes.
Whoa, that's trippy. But it suggests we're all connected and our individual perspectives create this like bigger picture.
It's like collaboration and understanding are super important, especially when the world feels so divided.
So we've gone deeper into Camblin's philosophy, his ideas about effortless action, the limits of language, and the importance of like firsthand experience. But his story isn't just about words. It's about a life lived through art. Let's look back at his biography and see what it tells us about his journey as an artist.
His dedication to his craft is really clear. He wasn't just trying out different art forms. He was really immersed in them, pushing his own limits.
And his biography mentions all these exhibitions he was a part of, from the Whitney Museum of American Art to the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. Clearly, he wasn't afraid to, like, put his work out there for people to see.
And he wasn't afraid to experiment. Some of his show titles are wild, like Money is No Object, Barter Show, and the former David Gallery presents the next to the last garage sale. You can see how playful he was and how willing he was to challenge, like, the art world's rules.
I like that he even collaborated with others, like in that Incomplete Works exhibition with the Anonymous Box Company. It shows he was open to trying new things and working with other artists.
And this is where one of his quotes is really relevant. He said, Just as you arrive at a technique that allows you to do the concepts that interest you, you become aware that in this disposable art culture, that the novelty is part of the looking. So ideas can change, but the viewer demands new techniques from the artist if he is watching him for a period of time.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack, but it speaks to that tension between, like, expressing yourself authentically and the pressures of the art world. He seemed to be struggling with, staying true to his vision while also navigating the expectations of the art world.
Yeah, it's a struggle a lot of artists face. How do you balance like staying true to yourself with the desire to be seen and appreciated?
And how do you avoid getting caught up in trends and fads that might, like, compromise your own unique voice?
Those are questions we can all ask ourselves, not just artists. How do we stay true to who we are in a world that's constantly trying to change us? How do we find our voice and use it in a way that feels real?
It's about finding that balance between honoring your own perspective and, like, connecting with the world. And Camblin's life and work is a great example of what that journey can look like.
He was so engaged with the world, but he never lost sight of his own like inner compass. That's a powerful lesson for everyone. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how Camblin's insights can help us on our own creative journeys and find meaning in a world that can often feel like chaotic and confusing.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been spending all this time with Bob Camblin, his philosophy, his art, but now it's like, how do we use all this? How do we apply it to our own lives,
Yeah.
to boost our own creativity and get through life's challenges?
That's what's so great about Camblin's work. It's not just about appreciating him as an artist or a thinker. It's about finding stuff that we can actually like use,
Yeah.
practical stuff.
Right. So let's start with that wu-wei thing. Effortless action, going with the flow. But how do you actually do that, in your daily life or even with big decisions?
I think you got to start by changing your mindset. Instead of always pushing and fighting, what if we just learn to adapt? Like that palm tree, just bending with the wind instead of snapping.
Yeah. Okay, but that's easier said than done, right? Life's crazy. How can you just go with the flow when everything's a mess?
It's definitely something you got to practice. It's not just going to happen overnight. But I think the first step is just noticing when you're resisting, when you're all tense, trying to force things, and then just choosing to like relax, to let go of that need to control everything.
So it's like surrendering, trusting that things will work out.
Exactly. And that can be a huge relief, especially when you feel overwhelmed. It's not about doing, it's about being.
And isn't that what creativity is all about? Letting the ideas come to you instead of trying to, like, squeeze them out.
Camblin totally nailed it when he said, the artist today is the only free agent. He saw creativity as this act of breaking free. And it's not about being perfect. It's about that raw, real expression, the stuff that comes from inside.
He also talked about finding that mystic switch. It's like that feeling you get, like a gut feeling that tells you you're on the right track. Trusting your intuition, even when it doesn't make sense.
For sure. And that's not just for art, that's for everything. Making tough decisions, figuring out what to do next, that inner voice, that's your guide, leading you to what really matters.
Camblin was also big on seeing instead of just looking. What do you think he meant by that?
Slowing down, paying attention to the little things, being present, and really taking in everything around you.
It's like his quote, "Not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze." It's about being aware of the small changes happening all around, the stuff we miss when we're not paying attention.
And it's in those quiet moments when you're just observing that you get the best insights, the most inspiration.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Bob Camblin, I want to leave you with this. How can you bring that wu-wei idea into your own creative work, or even just how you face challenges? What's it like for you to go with the flow instead of always fighting against it?
That's a good question to think about. Go check out Camblin's work, see what resonates with you, and let his perspective ignite your own creativity.
And remember, it's not just about the end result, it's about the journey. Embrace the tough parts, the failures, the unexpected turns, and let them shape you into the artist, the thinker, the person you're meant to be.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.